Now for the top story tonight, the pressure that American companies feel when controversy breaks out. Joining us from Washington, Peter Mirajanian, a crisis management and PR consultant. And here in the studio, Michael Maslansky, who runs his own communications company. All right, Mr. Maslansky, are boycotts un-American?
Well, personally, I hate a lot of what's going on here, but I wouldn't call it un-American. I mean, this is no different from using your influence to accelerate the way the market reacts to something. All they're doing is putting their view out there. It's no different from people on the Republican side saying that we should fire Obama.
No, that's an election. Mr. Maslansky, the boycott movement from the left right now is driven by threats. Threats. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think threat that what? That
retaliatory action against companies who continue to buy spots on programs they don't like. That is a threat. Would you agree?
Well, only to the extent that it's forcing or accelerating market change.
No.
Basically, what they're saying.
It's a threat. Basically, what they're saying is, if this sponsor continues to support this program, we will try to hurt that sponsor by telling our followers not to buy it. That's a threat. Right?
Yes, but I don't see why that's any
you said
not
yes.
free speech.
You said yes.
Yes.
Okay. It is free speech, but it's a threat.
But it's not un-American.
You don't think a threat is un-American?
Well, it's not a threat as in there's going to be physical harm. It's basically saying that people have a perspective.
Might not be physical, but there's going to be harm.
People agree with us, and those people who agree with us are going to take their business elsewhere unless you respond.
It can be done without a threat, as I did with Ludacris and Pepsi. It can be said, I'm not going to do it. And then you make up your own mind. All right, Mr. Mirajanian, how do you see it?
You know, Bill, I agree with you that the market should dictate this. The concern I have is who is behind these groups that come out and protest and call for these boycotts.
Name the group and I'll tell you who's behind it. We expose this every night.
Right. In the case of Brent Bozell, I mean, he has a myriad of groups that look to raise money by going after decency in programming, and he goes to advertisers and either punishes them or in some cases awards them.
I'm not aware of anything on that website that does that. Can you be specific about that?
Well, I know that if you look at his Parents Research Council organization,
he doesn't run the Parents Research Organization. He's involved with the organization which watches the media. You got to be careful about this, Mr. Mirajanian. You got to be careful here. We don't know any threats leveled by Brent Bozell. He's coming up after you on Hannity tonight. We're not aware of any threats, except for MSNBC. He's saying that you know, you fire these guys, and we don't think that's right. But this guy's not in business to do that. His website doesn't do this. No,
I'm not saying it's threats, Bill. What I'm saying is the motivation of the groups, whether it's on the left or the right, to use this as an ability, as a vehicle to fundraise and raise money off of that. That's my point.
I don't mind anybody raising money. Look, Media Matters, George Soros, we know they're hand in hand. They have the freedom of speech to do that. But when the threat comes, if you don't do what we say, we're going to pick it outside your... that's what Jesse Jackson was doing for years. You don't do what we want. We're going to line up buses outside your concern and try to drive you out of business. That's a threat. That's not American.
I agree. I think the whole notion, it is free speech, Bill, and I agree with you. And sometimes you may not like what you hear, but that's the marketplace and it should dictate.
No threat zone. Go ahead.
It happens to work. I mean, if Bozell had just written a letter, then we wouldn't be talking about this.
The mafia works too. It chills people to shut them up from testifying. That works.
But that's breaking the law. This is not breaking the law. This is using your influence, like every interest group does out there. It's using your influence. This is the next elevation in the narrative.
I use my influence. Would you see that? I use my influence.
Absolutely.
I don't have to threaten anybody.
Yes, but you don't have to threaten anybody, but you're making the same point. You're using different words, and maybe what we're talking about here is the narrative, the way that you frame it. But if you look at the way this whole controversy has evolved, it went from religious freedom to women's health to, you know, Rush Limbaugh's comments to Bill Maher's comments and the donation. This is the next escalation. This is always a battle over who can win the narrative.
But the narrative should be won in the marketplace, of ideas, not in the threat zone. You're right. Your analysis is right. Wait, Peter. But where you go wrong, Michael, is your analysis is right on, okay? But let the folks decide then, all right? Don't go in and say, if you don't do it my way, I'm going to punish you and all your employees, all right? And we're going to try to put you out of business. That's un-American. I'll give you the last word, Peter. Go.
Yeah, Bill, I agree with you. And the only point I was simply trying to make here is look at the motivation of the groups that are behind it and whether they're using it to feather their own nest and fundraise and do all kinds of other things. That's my point. You got to drill down and look at who's behind it and where they're getting their funding and what they're doing. And then you can really understand what they're all about and what their motivation is.